The laughter of a 5-year-old princess, carefree and bright, echoed through the shaded paths of the Norfolk estate, a sound as natural as the rustling oaks. Hundreds of miles away, in a windowless London room, a red flag flashed silently on a darkened screen. It wasn't a political threat or an intercepted communique. It was a purchase order, 2 industrial-grade drones, a specific type of chemical solvent, and a rental van, all bought within an hour with a ghost credit card by a man whose military file was stamped psychiatric discharge, hostile paranoia. The correlation algorithm tagged it. A junior analyst, her tea gone cold, connected it to the leaked itinerary of a certain royal family's weekend retreat. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't an abstract threat. It was a trajectory, and it was pointing directly at a little girl in a Wellington boots, currently trying to catch a ladybug. The clock, unseen and unheard by the smiling family, had already started to tick. The crisp autumn leaves of the Sandringham estate crunched under the boots of the royal protection officers, a steady, unseen rhythm to the weekend's tranquility. Princess Charlotte, a burst of energy in a green waxed coat, darted ahead of her parents, her laughter punctuating the damp Norfolk air. She was chasing a squirrel, her detail of 2 close protection officers, Kate and Arjun, maintaining a relaxed but precise distance. Their eyes, hidden behind sunglasses, never stopped moving, scanning the tree line, the paths, the distant public perimeter. In a converted stable block a quarter-mile away, Sergeant Major Tom Mac McLeish of the SAS, seconded to Royal Protection, watched a bank of monitors. The live feed from the officers' body cams showed a perfect, boring autumn walk. But the unease in his gut, a veteran's instinct, refused to settle. The intelligence briefing that morning had been vague, unverified chatter. No direct threat. Yet, the cancellation of a local village visit the day before, on his recommendation, still felt right. Charlotte, now proudly showing her father a muddy stone, was the picture of royal childhood. But Max saw the vulnerabilities, the open space, the multiple avenues of approach, the public road just beyond the ancient wall. His radio crackled softly. Alpha Team, static positions report, all clear. He acknowledged, his eyes glued to the thermal imaging feed, which painted the world in ghosts of heat. A deer glowed in the woods. A groundskeeper's truck emitted a warm plume. All normal. Meanwhile, in a rented lockup 30 miles south, a man named Leo reviewed his tools. The voices in his head, clear and commanding, had given him a sacred mission. The drones, modified and heavy, sat on the workbench. The solvent, now a volatile mixture in pressurized canisters, was attached beneath them. He wasn't a political radical. He was a soldier on a divine assignment, convinced the royal family were imposters, his mission to expose them with a sign only he could deliver. His plan was not assassination, but a spectacular, terrifying unveiling. A chemical smoke screen and deafening sound charges meant to descend upon the private garden, to disrupt and reveal the truth. In his fractured mind, he was saving the nation. He loaded the van, his movements methodical, a parody of military precision. Back at Sandringham, the walk was concluding. As the family turned back towards the house, a dark speck in the sky, far to the south, caught Arjun's eye. A bird? Too steady. He subtly raised his binoculars. Mac, this is Arjun. I have a possible UAV, bearing south-southeast, altitude approximate 300 feet, moving north. Over. Mac's hands flew across the console, pulling up air traffic radar. Nothing. Civilian drone frequency monitors showed a blip, then interference. Confirmed. I have an unregistered track. Alpha, Titan formation. Bravo team, move to intercept vector south wall. Now. His voice was calm ice. The peaceful walk shattered into a silent protocol. Kate and Arjun closed in, gently steering the family towards a reinforced garden shelter meant for such moments. Prince William understood instantly, his body positioning itself as a shield. Catherine swept Charlotte into her arms, the laughter gone from the little girl's eyes, replaced by confusion. Just a game, darling, she whispered, her heart hammering against her daughter's back. Mac, in the ops room, was now the conductor of a silent symphony. Police helicopters were scrambled, but they were minutes out. The drone feed, now visible on a hacked frequency, showed a terrifying bird's-eye view of the estate grounds. The drone was searching. Leo, from his van on a remote hill, guided it, his screen showing the thermal signatures of human shapes near the house. He didn't see a family. He saw targets of deception. He primed the release mechanism for his first canister. The revelation begins, he muttered to the empty van. The first drone dropped its payload not on the family, but 50 yards short, mistaking the heat signature of a greenhouse for a cluster of people. The canister hit the ground with a dull thud before erupting into a billowing, acrid orange smoke that raced across the manicured lawns. The second drone, higher and circling, locked onto the thermal outlines of people moving quickly towards the house. Inside the shelter, the world outside turned an eerie, opaque orange. Sounds were muffled. Charlotte buried her face in her mother's neck. The close protection officers had drawn their firearms, forming a human wall at the shelter's entrance. Arjun's voice was a steady stream into his mic, contaminated atmosphere, non-lethal. Wind is pushing it east. We are contained and secure. Need immediate ETA on threat neutralization. Over. Mac, watching the drone's feed via the hacked link, saw its camera now fixated on the shelter's roof. He's found you, Mac said, his voice cutting through the radio net. Bravo team, do you have visual on the operator? He has to be within a 5-mile radius for this signal. Bravo team, in armed Land Rovers, was already scouring the southern perimeter roads, their own drone detection systems pinging frantically. In the van, Leo was euphoric. The first sign was delivered. He switched the second drone to audio broadcast, his distorted voice screeching across the estate, a torrent of conspiracy and warning. The metallic noise echoed over the walls, into the shelter. It was then that Charlotte began to cry, the terrifying, unknown sound breaking through her brave silence. This was the trigger. The threat was no longer just physical, it was a psychological assault on a child. Mac made a decision. The rulebook called for containment and waiting for police. His mandate demanded immediate escalation. Bravo leader, authority granted for Rule 9. I repeat, Rule 9. Find that signal and terminate it. All assets. Rule 9 was the provision for immediate, decisive force against an imminent threat to life. It turned the hunters into a military strike team. The lead Land Rover's scanner pinpointed the signal source, a wooded hilltop 3 miles away. They accelerated, leaving tarmac, churning across a farmer's field. Leo, seeing the vehicles approaching on his peripheral monitor, panicked. The voices screamed at him to complete the mission. He directed the second drone into a steep dive, not to release smoke, but to crash it as a kinetic weapon directly onto the shelter. The image on Mac's screen was clear, the drone, a dark arrow, streaking towards the camera feed of Arjun's bodycam. Impact in 10 seconds. All units brace. Mac yelled. At that moment, Bravo team's Land Rover smashed through the copse of trees, emerging 20 yards from the white van. Leo looked up, his eyes wide. He had a detonator in his hand for the remaining explosives in the van. The Bravo team leader didn't hesitate. A single, precise shot from his rifle shattered the driver's window, and the hand holding the detonator. Leo screamed, falling back. A second officer fired a disruptor round at the drone's control antenna on the van's roof, destroying it. The diving drone, suddenly, lifeless, wobbled, and spun harmlessly into a field 100 yards from the royal shelter, exploding in a ball of chemical fire. Silence rushed back in, broken only by the crackle of the burning drone and Leo's sobs as he was dragged from the van and secured. The orange smoke over Sandringham began to thin, pulled apart by the wind. In the shelter, the sudden cessation of the noise was as shocking as its arrival. Kate received the all-clear in her earpiece. Threat neutralized. Area secure. Prince William stepped outside first, his arm around his wife, who still held a trembling Charlotte. The lawn was stained orange, the air smelled of chemicals, but the sky was once again just sky. The officers, weapons now lowered, formed a cordon, their faces grim. The danger was over, but the violation hung heavily in the air. The simple walk had become a battlefield, and a little girl's world had been shifted off its axis. The immediate aftermath was a study in controlled chaos. While the family was swiftly moved to a deeper, more secure location within the main house, the estate became a floodlit fortress. Police, forensic teams, and bomb disposal units swarmed over the hilltop where Leo was captured and the fields where the drone wreckage smoldered. A senior detective, pale-faced, briefed Mac in the ops room. The van had contained enough explosive material to level a small building. This smoke was a toxic irritant capable of causing severe respiratory distress. Leo, sedated and under guard at a hospital, raved about frequencies and imposters. For the protection team, the internal debrief began instantly. Every second was dissected. Had they missed a sign? Could they have redirected the walk earlier? The consensus was grim. They had not. The attack was unconventional, launched from a distance, and motivated by a pathology that was nearly impossible to predict with standard models. But this was cold comfort. Arjun replayed the moment he saw the drone in his mind, a loop of guilt and relief. Kate's hands wouldn't stop shaking until she had made a quiet cup of tea for Catherine, a simple, human act that grounded her. For the family, the shock was settling into a deep, quiet trauma. Charlotte refused to let go of her mother or father. She jumped at the sound of a door closing, her previously fearless curiosity replaced by a wary clinginess. Catherine and William were faced with an impossible task, explaining the unexplainable to a 5-year-old while managing their own fury and fear. That evening, in a secure sitting room, William knelt before his daughter. There was a very noisy, very silly machine in the sky, he said, his voice steady. The people who look after us, like Kate and Arjun and Mac, they made it go away. They kept us safe. Charlotte nodded slowly, her blue eyes searching his face for the truth. Is the bad man gone? She asked. Yes, my love, William said, pulling her close. He's gone. The institutional machinery of the monarchy and the state ground into motion. A statement was crafted, a security incident at Sandringham, resolved by the swift action of police and security services, no members of the family harmed. The press, sensing a massive story, camped at the gates, but the silence from within was absolute. Behind the scenes, the Queen and the Prince of Wales were informed in full. Meetings were held in Whitehall. The investigation into how Leo's purchases slipped through the monitoring net was already launching. Mac, after a grueling 24-hour shift, finally stood down. He walked out into the dawn, the cool air of relief. He looked at the peaceful estate, now scarred by tire tracks and chemical stains, and thought not of the victory, but of the little girl's cry he'd heard over the radio. The force had been necessary, immediate, and successful. Yet, he felt no triumph, only a heavy weight. They had won the day, but the cost, hidden in a child's newly fearful eyes, was still being counted. The days that followed were a new kind of normal, woven through with threads of the old fear. The public story faded from the headlines, replaced by other news. But, within the walls of the royal residences, security was permanently, invisibly heightened. New sensors were installed. Airspace restrictions became absolute. The protection teams trained for drone-specific threats, their drills now including the shriek of audio attacks, and the bloom of simulated smoke. For Charlotte, recovery was slow and gentle. Child psychologists worked discreetly with her parents, providing tools to help her process the event. She began to play in the garden again, but always within a defined, secure area, and always with a watchful eye on the sky. One afternoon, she was drawing at a table when Mac walked past on his patrol. She looked up, her brow furrowed in concentration. You're the boss, soldier, she stated. Mac, surprised, stopped. I help look after things, ma'am, he said gently. She held up her drawing, a scribbled green landscape, a gray house, and, in the sky, a large, smiling sun. Under it, she'd drawn a small, stick-figure person in a dark suit. That's you, she said, pointing. You made the noisy thing go away. She then took a black crayon and carefully crossed out the small, angry cloud she'd drawn next to the sun. The gesture was simple, profound. Mac felt a lump in his throat. He simply nodded. Yes, ma'am. In that moment, the operation was no longer just about protocols and force. It was about restoring the sun to a child's sky. A private ceremony was held for the protection team and the responding police units. No medals were given. The work remained in the shadows. But the Prince of Wales spoke to each member personally, his gratitude raw and evident. When he reached Mac, he held his gaze. Sergeant Major, what you set in motion, you gave me back my family. Mac, rarely at a loss for words, simply replied, It was the team, sir. We just did the job. Months later, on a bright spring morning, the family prepared for a public engagement, a small, carefully managed visit to a children's hospice. It was the first of its kind since the incident. The security briefing was exhaustive, every possible scenario gamed out. As they were about to depart, Charlotte, now in a smart little coat, turned to Kate, her close protection officer. Will the noisy things be there? Kate smiled, a genuine, warm smile. No, sweetheart. But we'll be there, just like always. The motorcade moved out, flanked by outriders. In the ops room, Mac watched the feeds. He saw Charlotte wave from the car window, a tentative, then beaming smile as she saw a crowd of well-wishers holding flowers, not cameras with long lenses. The operation was complete. The threat had been met with immediate, decisive force. The damage had been contained, the perpetrator in a secure facility, the protocols rewritten. But the true resolution was in that small, resilient smile returning to a princess's face, a testament to the silent, unwavering wall that stood between her and the chaos of the world, a wall that had held, and would continue to hold, come what may.